report from Brazil, boys, and there's a little bit of Chelsea about this, but I wanted to get your thoughts if this is smart or not by Man United. It states that Man United's deal for Matheus Cunha is expected to be for around 80 million euros. There's an additional 6 million euros added on as Manchester United want to spread the payments. It says a verbal agreement is close and the final stages of the personal terms are underway. So there is a feeling that the deal is fairly imminent for him to become a Man United player. But what's your take on United doing a little bit like what Chelsea did with Enzo Fernandez, paying slightly above the buyout clause so they can pay the money over a 5-year period? Is that smart from United and Ineos, or what?
Well,
How do you read that?
It's a lot of money, first of all, is what I'll say for Cunha. I think it is quite a high price to pay. But I think he's a good player. He'll improve you. He'll give you legs, energy in the middle, which you desperately need with that formation that you play. My concern, if I was a United fan, would be, what's the budget that you've got this summer for transfers? Because we've heard multiple times from various different sources that, United are in a bit of a sticky situation when it comes to finances and spend. And I think everybody agrees that United need a lot of money spending on the squad. Yeah, I'm talking maybe 250, 300 million. So what you said, 80, 86 million, did you say?
Well, it's going to work out. They said they've done it in euros because they're South American reporters, but it's 67 million pounds. So the buyout clause is 62 million, but United are essentially going to pay 5 million above it so they can spread the cost over 5 years rather than pay 62 million pound cash up front.
Right. Still a lot of money, but it's not as bad as 80. I didn't realize you said euros. Yeah, it's a lot of money, man. I think he's a good player personally. I actually do rate the guy. I'd probably have him at City. I can't even lie, but yeah, I think that for me, obviously, I think all clubs are trying to do this, isn't it? Where they're spreading the cost. They can't just whack 70 million quid in a bank account. You know what I mean? They need to spread it. So that's fine. That's chilling. But yeah, my major concern, if I was a United fan, is that's cool. Cunha's a good player. Happy that we're getting him, but that's one of 5, 6, 7 players that are needed at the football club. You need a lot of players, Terry. Do you have the money? So what's your United fan? What are the what's on the rumour mill? Do we have any idea of what budget United have got to spend this summer?
Well, Jamie Jackson, sort of journalist I've worked with before, has sort of spoke about how we can't even sign Delap, who we'll get onto later, and Cunha without selling people first. That has been pushed back against by Ornstein, Fabrizio, Jacobs, who have essentially said there is about 100 million to spend before a player is sold, or before we know whether we're in the Champions League or not. So my feeling is we are probably going to raise a good 100+ million in sales, because we with this, Rashford's going to get 40 to 50 million for us. Sancho's going to fetch us in around 25 million. Thank God Anthony's had a good loan spell. He's going to get us 40 to 50 million after what he's done in La Liga, which I think is really good. So there's 100-odd million that's going to be raised through the sale of those individuals, plus some other people to go. I would anticipate, with the fact that they've said we've got 100 million to spend without anything else having to happen. If we don't make the Champions League, I think we're going to spend about 200 million pounds. I think if we make the Champions League, that might stretch to somewhere in the region of 250 to 300. I don't think it'll go as high as 300, more the 250 end. So you're talking about $250 million maximum there. So for me, that's why it's such a mixture from United fans. There's links today to Semenyo. There's been links to Mbomo. The Cunha deal looks like it's going to happen. But a lot of United fans are upset with the links to, say, Liam Delap, because he's available for £30 million, which I think is cheap for a player that's just had the season that he's had. There's a buyout clause, but of course he's 22 years of age. He doesn't have the experience. Is he going to be able to lead the line with the pressure that's going to be upon him? But the one thing's for sure, there isn't a bottomless pit of money. And although Shajim got ridiculed for saying that the club are nearly bankrupt, have you seen the graphics that have come out today that show, I think Kieran Maguire shared, that it shows that Arsenal have now become the most profitable team ever in Premier League history. When you look at the graphic, and every year, it's one of those graphs where every year ticks by and you see the profitability lines go up and down. Man United were the most profitable period up until 2021. We go from being the most profitable to 2 years later, we're not even in the top 20. It's just all the money's gone. So that's where United fans have got to strap themselves in, because unless we make, that's why beating Spurs is so important. It's not about the trophy I think in terms of next season, the trophy's great. It's about more money so they can invest in improving this squad. Because I think Cunha is great, but we need a lot more. I agree with that completely. What's your thoughts?
So
on
how much is
sorry,
how much is the fee? How much was the budget? Sorry.
So I think if we don't make the Champions League, I think with sales, the maximum we're going to spend is probably 200 million. If we are able to make the Champions League, that's an extra 80 to 100 million of income. I think you might see us spend between 250 to 300 if there's that additional money.
Well, I think you need to win the Europa League then, man, because I think
we do. I don't disagree.
I think you need that 300 million, man, because that squad needs ripping apart, man. It really, really does. So yeah, listen, I like Cunha. I think he's a good player. I think he'll be good for your system because you need legs in when you play that formation, you play that system. You need legs in midfield. He's good for a goal. He can create, powerful. But yeah, that's just the start of it, man. Like United got to keep the pressure on the board and the owners to keep buying players because you need so much, man. What are you saying, Pops?
Really like the player. I think he's a top talent. I don't really buy all this attitude problem stuff. I personally think he's a top player, and I understand that he loses his head sometimes, but some of that is emotion and passion that goes over sometimes and balls over. I don't really know. Perhaps Terry can answer this. It's more of a question, I suppose, than a comment. I don't know if he's going to fit and how he's going to fit into the system. I'm not saying I don't think he will. I'm just trying to think of it now in my mind, thinking whereabouts he would play. So maybe that's a question we can talk about in a minute. But I do think that he's a top talent. I do think he's one of the most interesting that's played in the Premier League this season that's outside of the top boys. I think that he's definitely a wanted man. There was rumours in January that Arsenal and Forest were massively linked with him about coming in. And I think that he's a player that I still think Arsenal could do with, to be honest. I think that he can play in a number of positions. I think he's fairly versatile. I do see him more of a 10 than a 9 or a winger. I do think he's more of a kind of attacking, creative midfielder. Makes late runs. Got a boot.
He'd probably play, in my opinion, Potsy, on that left. Because United,
attacking 8, like a left attacking.
If you play in a 5 at the back, usually, your wingers would invert, right? Because obviously you've got your fullbacks. That's why you need to buy attacking fullbacks in that system. So if you play, for example, when Mount played, maybe you'd play him when Mount played against West Ham in the sort of like off of the left. He could, at that central, he could drift out wide if he wanted to. A bit of a,
you'd have a forward
position.
and then you'd have 2 behind, and he'd be one of the 2 behind. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he'd be one of the 210. That's what I think as well. He'll be one of the 2.
Bruno and Cunha behind the forward, or is Drew?
It'll be a combination actually, which I'm personally quite excited about, because I think what it will be is sometimes you'll have Bruno in that 10 with Cunha. I think Ahmad can be in that role. We are in talks, and we are talking quite heavily to both Semenyo and Brian Mbomo as well. So the club's looking at all of those players to essentially fit in and around those 10 roles. And although you'll get a little bit of, I don't mean to sound offensive, but I don't know how else to say it, you'll get a little bit of low IQ analysis, which will say, but they're all different. How can they all play? They'll all get in each other's way. It's about versatility, because you don't need. There might be games where teams are going to sit back and you want a little bit more guile on the ball, like a Cunha and a Bruno. There could be games where there's going to be more space to run into. So you say, right, today, actually, what we're doing is starting with Semenyo and Ahmad in those roles as an example, and it can work its way around it. What I also like about a few of the players we're linked to is they can play in a centre forward role. They can play in a role. They can play in a role. Not necessarily an out-and-out 9, but in more that kind of false 9 position, which we have tried a few times at United, but we just don't have players that are great on the ball in terms of holding up the play. Your Mbomos and your Cunhas act in those positions. So I think one of the most important things that Amorim has identified and asked for, and I think Walcott and the team are working on, is we need more goals in those front 3 roles, because Bruno Fernandes is the only guy with 19 goals this season that's really delivered. Ahmad's done well. He's done well, but he's had to play wing back quite a bit. Outside of those 2, Rasmus don't score. Xerxes don't score. Garnacho scores okay, doesn't score enough. The output needs to be, Garnacho's output needed to be double, maybe 2/3 more this year. It needed to be much, much better than what he's done. So that's essentially what it feels we're looking at here is athletes, great runners, great pressers that also have a good amount of output. So, yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about the idea of Cunha personally. I think there's a really good player in there, and I can't wait to see him. But At the same time, like my powder is always dry with these signings. I can see what they'll bring us. I can see they could improve us, but I need to wait and see if that makes sense because I've been